Good morning, everyone, and welcome to our webinar Networking 101, which is part of our Get That Job and Start and Grow Your Business series here at the Champaign Public Library. So thank you all for joining us this morning. So for the latest library news and updates, we invite you to visit our website, champaign.org, or you can follow us on social media. You could email us at librarian@champaign.org, or you could just chat with us whenever we're open just by visiting the homepage of our website. Moving on to a couple of Zoom features available to you that might help during this webinar. There are some icons at the bottom of your Zoom screen or the top, depending on your device. On the far left, you have the options that control your sound or your speaker. And then within the right or the center of the window includes a chat and raised hand option. You can use these options to ask us questions or share any comments. We're hoping to engage with you all this morning, have a conversation. So you can enter your question into the chat or raise your hand and we can unmute you so you can speak and ask your question or share your comment. We are also going to pause for those questions and comments. Let's see here. I want to remind everyone that our webinars most of our webinars are recorded and uploaded to the library's YouTube channel. So once again, this is Networking 101. And as I just mentioned, we're hoping this is going to be more of a conversation. We're hoping to interact with you all. My name is Neal, and I am the career librarian here at the library. So I help people with job applications, resumes, practice interviews, and just overall professional development. And I'll go ahead and let Madeleine introduce herself.
Good morning. My name is Madeleine Wolske. I am the business librarian at CPL. And what I do is help people start and grow their business, if you couldn't tell from the series name. And that includes nonprofits as well. So fun stuff.
Thank you, Madeleine.
So what is everyone hoping to get from today's session? So Jordan, do you want to deploy the poll? We can kind of see where exactly everyone's at. We have a fun group this morning. So essentially ask yourself, have you networked before? Are you comfortable doing it? Do you think you're a pro? What even is networking? Go ahead and click on whichever answer really defines where you're at right now. And do we want to wait, Jordan? Do you want to do your next slide and then we can see what the poll results are?
Yeah. Sorry, I'm seeing these answers come in. They're interesting.
I'm excited to see them.
All right, I'll give it another 30 seconds. If you want to just think about it, we'll wait for maybe one more. All right, I'm going to go ahead and end this poll because I think everyone has weighed in. Should I go ahead and share the results here?
Yeah. Oh, nice. Networking a little, looking to gain confidence. I feel like I'm kind of in between the looking to gain confidence and networking pro. What about you, Jordan?
I'm in between that. I'm always looking to gain confidence in everything I do, right?
Exactly.
Well, thank you everyone for sharing that. I'm going to stop sharing this here. So of course we have another question for you. What does networking mean to you? We know what it means to us, but has anything gone well for you or not so well? We're going to talk about challenges in a little bit here, but some people consider this pandemic a challenge, but perhaps the pandemic helped you and didn't hinder you in any way. So what does networking mean to you? So if you want, you can share those in the chat. You could raise your hand, but just something to think about as we go through this webinar. So what is networking? Of course, we ask ourselves this question every time we discuss networking. So as we prepared for this webinar, I decided to look up the actual definition of networking, which we have it here on the screen, but according to Merriam-Webster, it's the exchange of information or services among individuals, groups, or institutions. And what I like about this definition is just how simplified it made networking, which is how I wish I first approached the thought of networking. So networking is essentially about building relationships with other professionals, maybe in your career field or other fields. And those relationships will hopefully be mutually beneficial to you and those within your network. Another thing to keep in mind is that networking has different meanings depending on who you ask. I think whenever I have these discussions with people, everyone has a different idea, a different approach, and that's okay. Some people think that the goal of networking is to leverage your network or your professional contacts when it comes to an opportunity. So for example, they think that if you're looking for a new job, you may ask someone in your network for any insights or even to put in a good word for you. But we think that networking is beyond this, of course. So our first suggestion is instead of determining what networking is or how you should be networking, just make it your own. And that's where we found our success with it. So we decided to reframe or redefine networking in our own terms. So for me, I think of networking as just having that conversation. It's information sharing. It's building and maintaining those relationships to help us reach our professional goals. Madeleine, what is networking to you?
Networking for me is having a conversation or making a connection with the intent of leveraging your skills in exchange for someone else's. And that could also be specific information that you're trading. Essentially, there's intent behind the conversation. There's a goal.
Great, thank you.
Mm-hmm. So why do we network? This is kind of, if we touch back on the definition of networking, we have our why, and people who are here, if they want to start their business, maybe they want to get input from a target audience, or maybe you want to find some financiers. From a career standpoint, it could be you want to talk to someone and maybe get input on if they have any job availability. But essentially, this is where you define your goal. This is where you ask yourself, what is your strategy? Why are you doing this within networking? Also, what are the benefits of you networking? I mean, this is all about not sitting in a silo, being by yourself, kind of sticking to these four walls, not corners. So another thing is, Jordan had mentioned this earlier, most people get their jobs through networking. And one of my favorite reasons of networking, it's kind of a way to get ahead without a formal education. I mean, truly knowing individuals can really help you in the long run. For example, like speaking personally, I think that I wouldn't be at Champaign Public Library had I not made connections within local community engagement, local programming fields, which gave me the experience to then apply for this position. So networking essentially is overcoming and putting yourself into a better place without, again, formal education or other means that might be financial. Jordan, do you have anything to add?
No, that was great.
And then does anyone have any questions or thoughts? Anything you want to add on why do we network?
And we're certainly going to pause, but feel free at any point to type. We're going to just pause in case we don't see any at the moment, but again, type them in whenever you'd like. So before we move on to some strategies, we wanted to acknowledge that there are challenges to networking as we've faced them ourselves. For us, the pandemic certainly limited some of those in-person networking opportunities that we like so much, but then we moved on to some virtual options. But sometimes it was challenging not to have those in-person informal meetings. You know, sometimes for me, I wasn't always comfortable sharing a lot of information over email or through chat or text, things like that. Sometimes it's just easier to have that cup of coffee and have that conversation. We also had to be tethered to our technology a lot longer than usual. As I just mentioned, you know, the pandemic may have helped some people. Another challenge is simply the time and energy you have to invest into these activities related to networking. But again, if we reframe some of our approaches, networking and those interactions don't need to involve a huge gesture, right? So networking could involve liking somebody's article they shared on LinkedIn, or sending a message to someone or an email, just checking in on someone. We're going to talk about listening and learning in just a bit here, but sometimes it's just asking someone about a project that they're working on and how you can help. So it's not just about your opportunities, right? We talked about how it needs to be mutually beneficial, but say if you need something in the future, maybe that person you helped might be more inclined to help you since and return the favor since you helped them in the first place. Madeleine, what are some challenges that you've encountered when it comes to networking?
I think accessibility is the big one for me. I know there are quite a few local networking groups that cost a significant amount of money. And I think that really puts the networking isn't for me, or I can't afford to network kind of glasses on a lot of people, because it feels very cliquey. Like, oh my gosh, it's high school all over again. I'm walking into the lunchroom and everybody already is sitting at their own table and I can't fit in. So I think that's one issue. Then the other one is, for me personally, social anxiety. I'm also an introvert. So being in a room filled with lots of people I don't know is pretty intimidating. And even, so Jordan, you and I are both librarians. We spend a lot of our time on, like, at the front desk. We talk to a lot of people every day, and that drains me personally. Some people who are extroverts, they like get lots of energy from those sides of situations. But if I want to attend a networking event after work, I have to think of, I'm not going to be in the best mindset because I'm already pretty drained. I'm already really tired. And that's a big challenge for me. It's just that I want to make sure I'm engaged with individuals, and I know that's not going to happen after an 8-hour shift.
Right. We're human, right?
Yeah, we're human. Does anyone else relate to that?
Yeah, we have some comments here in the chat. I love this. So someone says, for me, networking serves the dual purpose of building relationships in the community and letting folks know about services available through my program. Yes. Nice. And that's what made me a big fan of networking, because when I just thought of it as having a conversation, just talking about the library that I love, it made things easier for me, right? Because we offer so many great things, library plug. But it made me, I was comfortable because I knew about my services. I loved these services. And that's what helped me reframe some of my approaches. Someone says they have a couple of struggles with networking. People might say they want to exchange info and connect and then ghost or ignore attempts to communicate. I also sometimes struggle with networking feeling forced or ingenuine. Yes, 100%. Definitely. I think Madeline's going to talk about that in just a little bit here. Yeah. But yes, I have been ghosted many times, even after I've reached out multiple times, but it happens.
There's only so many, just in case you didn't see my last emails that we can send. Yeah.
I actually had somebody who was supposed to be a mentor do that for me. I don't know what happened, but yeah, it's very real. Thank you for sharing that. Let's see here. So before we start networking, or as we network, we just wanted to touch on some items to consider. One item is just to consider performing an online audit or a review of your online presence. This is something that we discuss in another workshop, Tech Tips for Your Job Search, but I present alongside our technology librarian, Susan. So this online review would involve Googling yourself or using any search engine of your choice, but just looking yourself up, maybe just reviewing your overall presence on social media, maybe checking into your privacy settings, which can control what people see on your profiles, things that you may or may not know already. But the reality is people are going to look you up, whether it's on LinkedIn or they're going to Google you. You just want to be aware of what people are seeing and possibly perceiving. Not everyone understands the context of your content, so just be mindful. Madeleine, do you have any other items to consider before we move on?
Yeah, so this kind of links in the previous challenges to the conversation in this kind of preparatory phase we're in. I like to say, know thy boundaries. Again, you want to make sure you're at your best when you're networking. So make sure you have the right environment in place so you can shine. So that might be only doing networking on weekends, or going to networking events on the weekends versus after work, or maybe a lunchtime than some other time. So just knowing what you can do, what you can't do, also what's realistic. That's always something that I really promote to our entrepreneurs and the community, is kind of how much time are you willing to spend on something? Because I think we had someone mention earlier the attempts to communicate. Yeah, Claire had mentioned that. It's kind of an ongoing thing when you start networking. So if you're trying to make this connection, be realistic about the time it will take to really invest into it. Also, something else that I think you should do, not only thinking of the online audit for yourself, but also audit those who are going to this event, assuming that we're talking about a specific event that you're networking at. So like in Champaign-Urbana, we have like the young professionals, and that's a Facebook group. So what you could do is research some of the people who have marked going or are interested, and learn more about them. Which we'll talk about why you should learn more about them later on. But you can also maybe eliminate that ingenuity or that forced communication by seeing like, oh, if I look at this person's profile, I mean, assuming it's public or LinkedIn, if they interact a lot, I can maybe ensure that I kind of set myself up for success by trying to connect with these people who are really connected and active on a lot of these platforms. So like, I would assume that they would be more likely to respond to me much faster than someone else who maybe only checks their LinkedIn or Facebook or email once a week. Yeah.
Yeah.
I
agree. That's it. Yeah. And the same thing applies to even some of our presenters here at the library. If they have websites out there, they put things out on social media, I'm looking into those, and I automatically have something to talk about when I first meet them. So thank you, Madeleine.
Yeah. Oh, and then one other thing, consider bringing a buddy.
Yeah.
That's a big, I went to a networking event locally, and I actually brought Jordan with me because the last one I had been to, it felt very much like an execs or a boys club. And it was really hard for me to introduce myself, or because there were already people standing in circles having these conversations. I mean, there's only so much of laughing awkwardly and then introducing myself.
Right.
But with Jordan, it was really great to kind of tag team. When she was there, she raised my confidence, and we were able to talk to the people on the outskirts and get to know lots more people than if I were just there by myself.
Yes. And sometimes it's just practical too. Again, we offer so many great things here at the library, but I can't remember them all. So it's great to have my buddy with me to, help complement each other when we are at these events. So, and if you have any questions or thoughts, please feel free to type them into the chat or raise your hand and we can let you speak.
Yeah. Or if there's anything else you do to kind of prepare for networking events.
We would love to hear this.
Yeah. So moving forward, what do we do now? We feel pretty prepared. We've done our research. We have found where we want to actively network. So how can we, you've never heard of networking events. How do you find them? I can definitely help out with that. There's several Facebook groups and also groups on LinkedIn. I'm happy to share those once we send out the recording, but I can also make a note. Monica, if you want to send us your email, we can just send you that information.
Yeah, and I think then it's not just one avenue too. Like if you're willing, like of course it's social media, it's on their websites. I'm always part of that research, so sometimes as soon as I like a page, I'll see that they're having an event coming up, and it doesn't necessarily have to be like a networking event. It could be something that's open to the public, things like that. But yeah, Madeleine also has she has great approaches.
Great. So Jordan, what do we do now?
So in career services here at the library, when I'm meeting with people, we sometimes just take a step back And before we start on the job application or the resumes, we encourage people just to perform a self-reflection where you review some of your accomplishments, your goals, your passion, and ultimately why you want to network in the first place, as Madeleine discussed. So one thing that we suggest is keeping a career journal. And this would not just include your job history, but your accomplishments, your achievements, your strengths, your opportunities to improve, of course, your professional development records. And Madeleine's going to talk about our elevator pitches or the tell me about yourself speech in just a moment here. But it's not just for networking, but in your resume, but it's also a reference for you when you can't remember all those details. I know I can't remember all those details, but it's just a confidence booster. It's a morale booster before you network, before you go into that job interview. You got to know yourself first. So I wouldn't just glance at the resume. I would do a review of all the one. I have a document of just my accomplishments, accolades, things, the positive comments that I received from my job evaluations, things like that. And it really does boost me up. I know it's not for everyone, but it's something to consider.
Absolutely.
Anything to add, Madeleine? I'm sorry.
It's okay. To add on to that, be ready for the opportunity to talk about yourself. I mean, creating a list of these things, these qualities that make you, that make you confident, is the best way to set your best foot forward. So you're essentially creating your own elevator pitch. It's like telling me about yourself in an interview. That's what they would question, I think, right, Jordan? It's usually like, tell me about yourself.
Tell me about yourself.
So stressful because it's like, well, what aspect of me do you want to know?
Right.
So this is why we prepare this instead of going on a long-winded spiel of, I don't know, your obsession with gremlins. You can really target your message to the specific audience you're going to. So talk about your goals, what your strengths are, passions, with a positive energy. So also make it interesting to the person you're talking to. So earlier when I introduced myself, I was like, oh, hi, I'm Madeleine Wolske, the business librarian. Real talk. Did anybody actually know what a business librarian is? If you haven't interacted with me before, it's not a position that a lot of people know about or some services that the library doesn't provide. So instead of just leaving it like that, I would maybe in my preliminary research, my for your consideration page, I might see, oh, there's someone, oh, Jordan's going to be at this networking event. She does community engagement, community programming. So I can take that keyword, put it into my elevator pitch and say, oh, hi, Jordan, my name's Madeleine. I'm a business librarian, so I specialize in community engagement, programming, and facilitating equitable access to business resources for our diverse community. Wow, that's like at least 5 really good key phrases that I know because granted, it was cheating because I know Jordan, but if I had done the research and kind of figured out what she does as a career librarian, I would be able, okay, so what do I do that's similar to what she does to really start that conversation on the right foot, to get her interested and invested in who I am, really. So always just ask the questions like, so you know what you do, but what is it you do?
Right, right. Do
research that.
Exactly. Or just read the room sometimes, and it's happened for those of you who have attended networking events, they want that concise statement. We've been there when the person has to take 10 minutes to describe what we do. So with me, sometimes they even have fun. One of our previous colleagues would say, Jordan helps people get jobs and things like that, and whatever works, right?
Yeah.
But again,
alliteration too will help people remember your name. Jordan, jobs.
Yeah, but have it ready. That's what we're trying to say.
Yeah. And then one other thing I want to add is the Wonder Woman stance. I don't know if y'all have heard of this before, but this is something that helps me a lot with my confidence, and it's been scientifically proven to help a lot of others. So before you're going into a networking event or just any event where you think you might be feeling a little intimidated, you put your hands on your hips with your shoulders out, your elbows faced out, feet hip width apart, and just take some really deep breaths with your back straight. And it's been proven to increase your confidence So I recommend you trying it next time you feel like you need that pump up after you've reassured yourself that, like, you know what, I am qualified and I am amazing and people want to learn more about me.
Oh, someone has a great comment here. Your body can't tell the difference between nervousness and excitement. Tell yourself you're excited and you'll feel less nervous. Yes.
I love that. I love
Yes.
that.
Yeah, join us next time when we have this conversation. I love that. So now we've kind of evaluated ourselves. And again, this is an hour-long network or webinar, so we can only talk about so much. But now we're going to talk about maybe curating our network or tapping into what we already have. Oh, Madeleine. Oh, there you go.
Oh, sorry. I was going to cough and then I was like, nope, we're going to do this. And I appreciate everyone's patience of recovering from a cold. So your network, it doesn't really extend to just events. I know we've kind of put the focus on networking events specifically, but that's not all network is. Your network is. Your network is your personal contacts, friends, family, neighbors, current, past employers, managers, coworkers, that person you met at the grocery store line and you're now best friends with. It's really anyone. It's anyone that you feel comfortable having a conversation with that can be a benefit. And I think that's the best thing about networking is reframing the whole act of like, you know what, this isn't just a standing on stage with the spotlight on me. I'm actively networking every single day with each interaction that I make, each new person I meet. I don't know if y'all are familiar with like the 6 degrees of separation, but if you know 6 people who you can name will help you reach your goals, they each know 6 other people who can realistically help you meet your goals, and so on and so forth. So really, your networking is as huge as it wants to be. It's all about leveraging your relationships with the understanding that they have their own pool of contacts that you can access. So connections beget more connections.
Yes, yes. Literally, sometimes on LinkedIn, exposed to more. And I just wanted to add in, this also applies, of course, to your references for job applications, your mentors or your mentees, and any other professional contacts. I also wanted to especially with your references, reiterate maintaining those connections. You're gonna have to be proactive. You're gonna have to be organized. I'm gonna talk about staying organized in just a moment here. But it's one thing to make that initial connection. But as you build those meaningful relationships and establish that rapport, you want it to become more enriching and more valuable over time. So maintaining those relationships will help, and not ghosting someone, as someone mentioned earlier. And sometimes it's just as practical as keeping up with their contact information and just overall updates to their life. And sometimes you got to do work to do that. Madeleine, go ahead.
Oh yeah, I completely agree about doing the work, especially if you want to expand your network within your specific field or industry. There are lots of, with just some research, email lists, blogs, newsletters that you can kind of essentially subscribe to and learn more about others who you may want to be contacted with in the future.
Yeah, I'm on a lot of library listservs. And then on the other hand, don't sign up for too many like I did at first. But that's what alerts me to some of the networking events, opportunities, people who I can contact, presenters here at the library. So a positive that came from the pandemic, we hosted these webinars and we were able to host people outside of our local area. I did also want to mention, just keep it organized. I'm going to talk about a strategy later, but just keep track of your network, their email addresses, websites, phone numbers, things like that. Make notes about the person. So I do have a spreadsheet, again, not for everyone, but of where I've known somebody and what they're doing. For job seekers here at the library, we suggest that people keep track of their job applications, timelines. And again, this might help you with some of the networking events that you may attend, especially if they come every month or once a year, things like that. Mm-hmm. Any other questions or thoughts? I love that people are talking to us in the chat here. All right, so goal setting. So Madeleine had a really great discussion on goal setting, and I really encouraged her to add it here because I did think it was applicable. So if you don't mind, Madeleine.
Not at all. So this is where you're essentially defining your why. Why am I having this conversation? What is my goal with this conversation? Why do I want to meet Jordan Neal? Why do I want to do that? Besides, she's wonderful. So an example would be, I want to find executives who would be interested in philanthropy for wildlife rescue. And that's coming from a perspective, if I were creating a nonprofit, that would be local wildlife rescue. An example for me personally that I've used in the past for networking events is I want to make meaningful connections with community leaders and share information about library resources to increase awareness and participation, utilization throughout our community. This is similar to a SMART goal. Not necessarily as intense. You don't have a specific timeline, but the more specific you can be, the better prepared you are to have that conversation, to kind of be able to plug in your why when you start creating meaningful connections with others.
Yes, 100%. Like one of my goals is I'm a mentor to 2 mentees. And my timeline, my goal, which is specific, is to check in with them at least once a semester, once a quarter, things like that. So it's, again, we have to be proactive with some of this. And how to. So for Madeleine, I keep on making attitude is everything. And then me. But attitude is everything.
So here we are in the nitty gritty of it. Okay, so we're at the event, or we're just at the grocery store. Anywhere you can network. So attitude is everything. This is where you consider your body language, and this can be physical or digital. Are you maintaining non-creepy eye contact? How is your body positioned? Are you spelling and pronouncing their name correctly? I know if you're doing a digital Zoom networking event, or essentially just reaching out to someone on LinkedIn, please always triple check the way their name is spelled. I know Jordan, it would be how her name is pronounced. But it is kind of irksome when names are spelled incorrectly or pronounced incorrectly, and you just want to convey confidence and warmth. So when you do think about your body language, one good tip is to use your feet to essentially face. Make sure your toes are pointed in the direction of the person you're talking to. That really centers your shoulders to them, and it gives the experience that you're more engaged because they can visually see that you're engaged in the conversation. You'll also notice that I'm making eye contact with my camera right now. It's really hard to not look at myself in the video or look at Jordan when she's talking, but especially when you're presenting or when you're saying something. I mean, you don't have to be looking straight in the camera all the time. But when you're talking, that's a really good tip of looking more engaged and tracking back to making sure you're knowing your boundaries, knowing your strengths. Attitude-wise, don't come to a networking event exhausted, kind of upset. You want to make sure that you are setting yourself up for success by being in a positive emotional state. Jordan, do you have anything to add? Or does anyone else have things to add?
Yes. It also applies online because I don't, especially in the virtual world, how many Zoom meetings have we had where you've seen people leaning on their hands, like just turn your video off. But anyway, before I move on to the listen, learn, and repeat, I also wanted to briefly mention just punctuality. So being on time for anything, of course, just shows courtesy and respect, especially with networking. You want to ensure that you're on time, you're ready to go, again, and being respectful of others' time. Especially for the job seekers we help here, being on time can be a reflection on your time management skills and ultimately maybe even your job performance as an employee. Networking can yield many opportunities. So I would treat it just, like a job interview, and hopefully most people would avoid being late to a job interview. Perhaps you can even consider showing up early to a networking event. This is something that has certainly helped me a lot. And it was mentioned during one of our recent career workshops by a career expert. So arriving early just helps me arrive without being in a rush. I get to choose my seats. I get to relax and grab my refreshments. And most importantly, people will gravitate towards me or come to me because I'm the first and only person sitting in the room. And in reality, for some reason, sometimes you want to leave an event a little early, so you have the excuse of saying, "Oh, I've been here an hour. I've been here a couple of hours." So you get to go if you want to. So for listen, learn, repeat, we're just encouraging you to practice what would help with any relationship. So listening to understand, listening to comprehend. For whatever reason, sometimes we are just listening to respond and not taking in what someone is sharing with you. When you're listening to understand, you're going to be granted the opportunity to learn things about that person, like shared values. And then you can reflect back to them that you're really listening and hearing someone, and that just helps strengthen that relationship. This is especially helpful when you are looking for those opportunities to help them out or show investment, and ultimately help maintain that relationship. I know it's valuable when someone remembers a little something about me or offers some insight to a challenge I have. It shows that they're listening and invested in my success. And it just helps the relationship. Madeleine did it the other day. I won't mention what it was, but she had heard there was a need that I had, and she delivered the next day. And I didn't even realize that she was listening. I was telling everybody this information in a group setting, and it was really valuable what she did the next day. And then just keep in mind that a lot of networking resources mention that you essentially want to dedicate 80% of your conversations to just focusing on the person, and then 20% on self-promotion and focusing on your opportunity. I know that might be difficult. Just think of it as like an 80-20 rule, but in fact, I would even say the first time you're meeting with someone, you may even want to spend 100% on listening to their story, and then focus on the 80-20 rule here for subsequent conversations. And then we would like to engage with charm, Madeleine. How do we engage with charm?
So this is what you shouldn't do. Naturally, you kind of want to engage with charm, means have a kind of a relaxed smile on your face, relaxed posture. But this does not include criticizing, condemning, or complaining. The 3 C's. So be aware that you don't know this person. You may not know this person at all. And if you criticize something that seems nonchalant, even if you mean it in like a joke setting, they might not take it as a joke. So ensure almost you have to have that, keep that respect meter turned at 120%, just because you don't know who they are. And if you are trying to leverage this relationship in the future, you want to ensure you're on their good side. Also, just complaining about anything, it kind of puts a negative taste in everyone's mouth. Ask yourself, what does my ideal conversation look like? How do I want people to talk to me? And that probably includes them asking a lot of questions about you. People always love talking about themselves. So when you're listening, learning, and repeating, ensure that you're doing it in a active way. So if you do want to learn more about the best ways to engage with others, and that would include like remembering their names, for example, listen, learning, repeat, but How to Win Friends and Influence People by Dale Carnegie. It's a classic, but it really dives deeper, and it just tells you how to be an active, engaged listener. So, and it's just genuinely being interested in other people. I know we had said when the challenges earlier, someone commented that like people would just ghost them. I like to think of this as like the networking noob move, where people are just handing out business cards left and right, and they're not staying for the conversation at all. And in that point, I would just throw away the business card. I mean, there's definitely value in passing along a business card after having a conversation with the person. But why would I reach out to someone who didn't take the time to get to know me a little bit more? And vice versa. If you're trying to, if you've already done the research and you're like, oh, this person would really help elevate what I'm doing. But if they're treating you in a way that isn't respectful, I would also just kind of ask yourself, is this an indicator for the relationship in the future?
Mhm.
Do I actually want to partner with them for future projects? So ensure that, yeah, you're engaging with charm, but if that isn't reciprocated, then why?
Protect your peace. Protect your peace. Let's see here. Make sure that I didn't miss anything here in the chat. Okay. Any questions or thoughts to share?
Networking. Do we want to go back to networking is ongoing?
Oh, yes. I'm so sorry. So networking is ongoing. Just remember that networking, it's just never ending, like Madeleine said, and especially maintaining the connections. It's going to require attention and persistence and organization and just overall energy. But hopefully it's going to be worth it at the end. It's been worth it to us. You know, I don't want to speak too early, but we're hoping for the next time we present this, hopefully in person, maybe in the spring. We might even have a networking event that we might be hosting. I don't want to give away too much, but we're trying to create some of these opportunities for you. So anyway, any questions or thoughts? I'm loving the chat. That's why I was getting to this, but anything you'd like to share with us?
I would maybe make an additional comment for the networking is ongoing, and then also relate it back to the 80-20. Jordan, I really loved what you said about making that initial meet 100%, just creating that genuine connection. And then when you do that, networking is ongoing. So that follow-up email, this is maybe where you leverage your skills in exchange for theirs. This is where you do a follow-up email or a follow-up LinkedIn friend and just say, hey, I really enjoyed talking to you about XYZ. Also, with my experience in this, maybe we can talk, because I know it's related to what you're wanting to do with this. It's essentially doing like there's your 20% prompt. So that would be a great way of ensuring the networking is ongoing, of creating that meaningful connection. We have one comment. Sometimes people are really nice when you meet them and you are in contact with them. They're not the same. That's real as well. So I guess in that instance, I think, yeah, I would again ask yourself if you need to continue this relationship, and protect your peace.
I say that all the time. And sometimes, you know, I was going to mention later, it's also, sometimes it's going to be organic, sometimes it's not, but I don't force it. Like, to be honest, I don't want to say it's a set rule, but if I've reached out to somebody a couple of times and they haven't responded, I'm out. If they haven't maintained the same energy with me after we first meet, I don't know. You know, I don't know if I'm going to continue. I get to control that on how I want to move forward with that. So yes, very real. Let's see here. Someone else says, how do you keep usage of social media in check, not get time sucked into scrolling endlessly, not making real life connections? Yes.
This is real.
Yes. For me, I don't know about you, Madeleine. I mean, we work at a library, so I'm trying to read a lot of books and things like that. Again, I have a family, so sometimes I don't even have time to do this because children are yelling at me. For LinkedIn, I've kept a goal. Again, it's going into it is, and like Madeleine was saying, some goal setting. I try to be on there once a week sharing content. But yeah, I'm going to be real with you. It is a problem. Sometimes I might get sucked in, but I really have to just practice some discipline. Madeleine, how do you keep it in check?
So again, having that goal of how am I going to use social media to leverage my connections, and maybe looking at kind of your front page. And I also want to ask you a further question. Are you specifically talking about Facebook, Instagram, or LinkedIn? I found LinkedIn to be the best place for me to pursue networking opportunities that are related to my work goals. And that's just how I use social media. Facebook, for me, I know a lot of people make great connections on there, or others like small businesses. They have a lot of success interacting with Facebook and Instagram. But it's not, I don't use those two platforms in a way to network. So for LinkedIn, it's having, so for me, LinkedIn, I typically spend about 10 minutes in the morning scrolling through, and I limit it to that 10 minutes. I actually have an app on my phone that will lock LinkedIn because I get sucked in. It's a real thing. I also had to delete TikTok because of this, unfortunately. But I spend 10 minutes just doing a casual scroll, seeing what's going on. And then actually later in the day, when I might have a program or event that I want to share and tag others in it, that's where I create the post. And then I'll actually interact with the platform on my computer. I find that I don't get as sucked in when I'm on a monitor rather than my phone, because it's really easy just to scroll with the thumb. But when I'm using a mouse and everything else, I don't want to dedicate that much time. I also know Jordan had a really wonderful presenter who talked all about LinkedIn. Jordan, can you remind me her name?
Stacey Gordon.
Stacey Gordon. I attended that webinar and it was fantastic how she says she spends like in bed like 20 minutes every day just interacting with people on LinkedIn. And that's like a casual interacting. I mean, she's still laying in bed. She just woke up. This is just what she does to start her day because so much of her job is reliant upon making those seemingly meaningless connections. But it's that small interaction that shows the person you're interacting with that you value them in a way. It's kind of like small business social media marketing when you're creating your brand reputation or identity. These small connections really are meaningful. It might just be a scroll in bed for you, but the person you're interacting with, that's going to leave a really good taste in their mouth, which I keep on using that metaphor.
That's so interesting, Madeleine. So I purposely have also gone to web-based. I know it's so easy to access the apps on your phone, but I do that with LinkedIn. Sometimes you can even do that with Instagram, Facebook. Like Madeleine said, I have been defaulting to what has been most valuable to me, which has been LinkedIn recently. That's how I've connected with presenters. That's how I connected with Stacey Gordon as a presenter. By the way, that webinar recording, she has really great insights. That's on our YouTube channel. But sending a message to people, checking in on them. And again, it's not as formal. It's almost easier to talk on LinkedIn than a formal email, because with an email, you're trying to think of how should I start it? How do I end it? I have an email signature, all that stuff. But on LinkedIn, it's like quick little messages here and there. And again, I don't know about you, Madeleine, I have the basic plan on LinkedIn, so I'm not even paying for it. I know there's a premium option, but there's a lot you can do even with the basic plan. But again, it's just like any social media site. But yes, Claire, we're right there with you. But for me, I decided early on, especially during the pandemic, because I was starting to get really sucked in. I had to reset some of my goals and how much I wanted to be on social media. So we always like to share resources here at the library, and we wanted to share some networking tools that helped us, and they might help you during your networking pursuits. By no means is this going to be comprehensive at all. So this first set of resources is my list. And the first item is a book that we have within our library collection titled Minority Leader by Stacey Abrams. We actually have this book available in our physical collection as well as through our online services. And it was actually a book suggested to me by one of our colleagues here at the library when we were discussing networking. So in this book, Stacey acknowledges some of those networking challenges that we discussed earlier, but she also acknowledges that for some, networking starts with just convincing yourself, maybe overcoming some fears, but ultimately knowing that you are worthy of every opportunity, even if you're not invited to the table, and that your passion and your ambition is enough. And she discusses networking, but also the values of mentors, self-advocacy, and again, focusing on your passion. Moving on to LinkedIn Learning. This is actually a subsidiary, I guess, of LinkedIn. I think that's how they say it. So this is just a resource. It's an online tool that is provided by the library that you can access with a Champaign library card or a virtual library card. And it has great videos and courses that can help you as you network, including courses on public speaking, work culture, how to use certain technology, any tools that can help you network. It's one of my favorite resources here at the library, so I am a bit biased, but I found it. We use it for our own staff training here at the library. It's very useful. And then finally, I mentioned staying organized. So again, cloud storage like Google Sheets, Microsoft Excel Online can help you keep those contacts organized. Again, we talk about some of those in our tech tips for your job search, but Like I said earlier, in career services, we're encouraging people to keep track of their job applications, their resumes, and other professional development documents in cloud storage. Sometimes I'm helping people apply for jobs, or they're trying to attend events, and I'm like, I think you attended that job fair. I think we applied for that job. And then once I help them get a spreadsheet situated, then they're like, oh, you're right. So we have spreadsheets, and then we'll include notes, things like that. So I would take advantage of cloud storage. Some of these are free for everyone. Even Stacey Aber mentions in her book that she uses a spreadsheet for life planning. So I find it very helpful just to stay organized.
Great. So I have some resources as well. My favorite book on networking is Never Eat Alone by Keith Ferrazzi. It's very, she's a big book. But the great thing is I've found useful information in each section. So you can always go to the table of contents, pick and choose which chapter works best for you. But I love the fact that it also incorporates like digital best habits. And if you kind of want to learn more about, well, like what are some best practices to follow up, or how can I kind of engage more with people who can leverage or people who can connect me with others who can leverage my current position, highly recommend Never Eat Alone. Most people typically just recommend How to Make Friends and Influence People by Dale Carnegie, but I feel like it's a wonderful classic. But if you kind of feel like you're already confident having a conversation with someone else, try Never Eat Alone. Next, I have Jessica Rasdell, Scale Your Business with Public Speaking. She actually was a presenter here. We have a webinar of her at the library, and kind of like networking, public speaking tends to fit in a strict stereotype of like, oh my gosh, I'm so afraid of public speaking. Public speaking is only when I'm in a stage. Networking is only if I'm at a networking event. When in reality, we do these two things every single interaction we have with others. And she is such an engaging presenter and gave me lots of really great information on how best to engage with others. And then lastly, Toastmasters. This is actually a public speaking club. We have two locally, and they essentially just work together to encourage you to up-level your public speaking skills. And then lastly, I'm just going to add something that's relevant for today only. Earlier, someone had asked, what about these networking groups? Parkland is actually having a networking event later this evening. I believe it's called, Jordan, you're attending it as well, I think. It's Empowerment Series,
Yes.
How's Your Networking? So this is definitely, it's a networking event focused on women entrepreneurs and community leaders, but that is an example of an opportunity we have locally that if you want to practice networking, maybe check it out.
I'm going to attend, so maybe I'll see some of you there. So
yes.
Well, thank you, Madeleine. And as Madeleine mentioned, we have them, a lot of our webinars are recorded and they're on the library's YouTube channel. So we have a lot of great content on there. So we invite you to check that out. When you have a chance, you can go to just YouTube and search Champaign Public Library, or you can just visit champaign.org /YouTube to connect with some of those videos. So like we said, we're about the end here. Again, we invite you, if you have any final comments to share, but like we said, networking is ongoing. Sometimes it's organic, like we said, sometimes it's not. Sometimes you have to work a little bit harder. Sometimes you connect instantly with someone. A few weeks ago, there was someone that I felt like we were old friends. And then someone the next week, it wasn't the case. So it's just going to be different every time. Me and Madeleine network differently, and that's okay. It's whatever works for you. Like Madeleine said, attitude is everything. Stay positive, stay focused. I recall something that one of our previous presenters, Ashley Watkins, shared, and she just said, positive thoughts, beget positive outcomes. So move forward, however, whenever you're comfortable. So if that's just starting a conversation with someone, that's great. If it's attending a networking event like the one this afternoon that Madeleine mentioned, that's great. It might mean coming to a library workshop and engaging with other community members, or just come and have a conversation with us. So we don't mind it. So again, make it your own, and just again focus on that ambition and your passion. Go ahead, Madeleine.
Yeah, absolutely. And if you want to maybe practice networking with one of us, that would be a great use of our one-on-one book a librarian services.
Yes, yes. So thank you all for joining us this morning. If you want to connect with us, you could just email librarian@champaign.org, or you can give us a call. If you email the librarian account, it will get to us. We will respond to you. So we look forward to connecting with you all.
Mhm.
And so for our next career webinar, that's going to be on December 14th. It's going to be Interview Basics with Mike Furman, who is a director at the university with career services. And he's going to not just talk about interview basics, but hopefully negotiations, hopefully when you are offered that job. So again, Tuesday, December 14th at 10 a.m. And Madeleine, what is coming up for business services?
Yeah, so exciting. We have the last in our social media marketing series on on the 20th, not next Monday. And that's with Hope Linker. She's a social media strategist. And this is going to be a roundtable conversation. So this is really a great opportunity to have Hope give you personal feedback on your it could be a business account. It could be even your personal LinkedIn. She did do a really great webinar on how to cultivate connections with LinkedIn. And you can even ask her, like, how do you keep check of social media? Maybe ask her, like, hey, so this is kind of what my network is on LinkedIn right now. What are tips that you recommend so I can increase engagement with my audience or expand my network? So it's a really awesome opportunity that y'all should definitely come to or tell your friends.
Yes, and we have a lot more events related to, of course, the business and career series, but also connected with our technology series, crafty adults, writers workshops. We have a new legal series that we've just started. So just visit champaign.org/events for more information. I also put in a link in the chat here. If you want to receive those library news and updates through email, you could visit that site, champaign.org/news, and subscribe to our newsletter.
Yeah, and on that note also, don't just stick in the career or in just the business silo. We have so many amazing programmings with lots of overlapping subject areas. I mean, that's why we did this webinar together today, because a lot of the services that you provide, Jordan, my audience are really going to enjoy and learn a lot from, and vice versa.
All right, and then we have our as Madeleine mentioned, our book a librarian. If you want to meet with us one-on-one, if you need help with your business or job applications or with technology or practice interviews, anything like that, you can meet with us one-on-one in addition to attending some of our webinars. And once again, I have our email address here, librarian@champaign.org. And that's all we have for today. Any other final comments or questions from anyone? Well, thank you, Madeleine, for joining me this morning. This was fun.
It was a great time. Thank you, Jordan. And thanks everyone for joining us as well.
Thank you. Thank you for attending. Got a thanks in the chat.
Yay.
All right. I think I'll go ahead and end the webinar. I hope everyone enjoys their morning. Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye.